Tēnā koutou katoa and morena. Welcome to the 9th day of hearings of the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity. We're very conscious of the many women who came before us who've been working to achieve dignity for women in their struggles for equality. We honour them and we thank them. Me ara koe ki te hao o hine ahu one. Our work continues that effort. My colleagues this morning, Ria Bond, Sue Bradford, Jackie Blue, Jo Hayes, Leanne Dalzell, Nanaya Mahuta, Steve Chadwick. I want to mention our team because we could not be doing this work without extraordinary support. So Beth, Amy, Anna, Morgan, Bessie, Karenina, Len, we'll never be able to thank you enough for this incredible effort that you are making with us. We have another morning of outstanding submissions, and we begin with Melanie Placefed from Soroptimists. We are not operating under parliamentary privilege, so we ask all of our submitters to please be very respectful and not defame anybody. Thank you.
Kia ora, ko Melanie toka ingoa ki te nohu ahu ki topo. I also, along line with me is also Sylvia, who is from Tamaki Makaurau. We are both represent Soroptimist International Aotearoa New Zealand. We are part of the National Executive. Soroptimist International Aotearoa New Zealand, SIANZ, is part of a global volunteer movement that has been advocating for human rights and gender equality for over 100 years. The organisation is committed to improving the lives of women and girls through advocacy, awareness and action. And I'm the current president of the National Association, and Sylvia leads our program team, which is the team that looks after all our activities and actions and reporting functions. Within Aotearoa New Zealand, there are 18 clubs from Tamaki Makaurau through to Waihopai. The first club was established in Wellington 85, nearly 86 years ago. Any activities undertaken by the clubs are noted and recorded in a report submitted to a database, which is maintained by the South East Pacific region that we are part of. These activities can be linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and recorded and form part of the reporting by the Federation and Soroptimist International to the UN and to CEDAW regarding policies that affect women. The principle of equal pay for work of equal value, regardless of gender, is one aspect of what we support. We speak from the perspective that in the voluntary work and organisations that SIANZ support, anecdotally we see inequities and hear the stories from those who assist women in the lower social order, economically and culturally, those who are more often unseen and unheard, and of how there is a knock-on effect of paying women less than they are worth, which then enables them to improve their lives for the future of tamariki and whānau. Many of the organisations and groups we support are in the area of domestic violence and providing basic living assistance. The women that these organisations and groups support work in the low-paid sectors of employment, and they don't have necessarily have a great understanding of the process or access to funds to face a legal battle. Another factor that sits alongside the women that the organisations and groups support is the pay equity for those who are in the organisations providing their support and assistance to lives of these women. It's a double-edged sword. As we said in our submission, when women are paid less, the effects are felt by families and communities. Reduced income limits women's ability to invest in education, health, and opportunities for themselves and their children, perpetuating cycles of disadvantage. In New Zealand, as in many countries, there has been a persistent gender pay gap, with women earning less than men on average for comparable work. This gap has economic, social, and cultural implications affecting the financial security, career progression, and overall well-being of women and their families. Addressing pay equity is essential for achieving gender equality and social justice. Globally, New Zealand does perform moderately well on gender pay equity, and currently New Zealand is ranked 5th in the 2025 World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap report from the small and has the smallest gender pay gap behind UK, Norway, and Iceland. This is a drop from 4th to 5th place, though, in the overall rankings, and this is due to declines in economic opportunities and political representation for women. This does not mean that there should be any complacency in our national legislation and processes for ensuring pay equity. SIANZ completed a submission to the Select Committee for several key reasons. As number one was advocacy for women's rights. As an organisation focused on empowering women, the Select Committee's inquiry is an important opportunity to advocate for restoration of legislative and policy changes that will help close the gender pay gap. There was also relation to the promotion of fairness. The submission aimed to highlight the importance of fairness and equity in the workplace, emphasising that equal pay for equal work is a fundamental human right. It's also our alignment with international commitments. New Zealand is a signatory to the international agreements such as the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, previously mentioned CEDAW. SIANZ's submission reinforced the importance of upholding these commitments at a national level. And also by participating in the process, we sought to raise public awareness about the ongoing issue of pay equity and encourage broader community engagement in the conversation. Soroptimist International Aotearoa New Zealand completed a submission on pay equity to advocate for gender equality, promote fairness, support New Zealand's international obligations, and foster public dialogue regarding a change that, whilst legal, has been received as being undemocratic. We feel that New Zealand's international reputation as a leader in gender equality, thinking back to the work of Kate Shepherd over 130 years ago, is at stake. Our involvement reflects our ongoing commitment to advancing the rights and well-being of women and girls across Aotearoa New Zealand. Kia ora, ngā mihi nui.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you for your submission. I was very interested in how you think. So, for example, does Soroptimist have an international conference? How do you see international reaction to what has happened here? Have you felt that already through your organisation, or you instinctively know that that's what will happen?
Yeah, Sylvia, feel free to leap in as well. I think though it's a lot of what has been going on in the community with regard to pay equity, but also the grant, very much in the area of grants, is very much an area that affects organisations that we are involved with as well. And there's a huge struggle there with funding allocations, and that also being passed down through the lines to you don't get the funding allocation, you can't pay the people, you can't have pay equity, you can't help the community. It's that whole chain. Something breaks in the chain, and the people that need the assistance aren't getting it.
Okay, so I've just been learning about a new phenomenon. which is called paid volunteering. So these are the people who were employed, who are being told that either we have to cut salaries to meet the salary requirement for this many workers. There's no overtime, etc. And so some workforces are deciding that so that everybody can remain in place in these kinds of organisations you're talking about, they'll move to being paid volunteers. Have you come across that?
I'm aware of a particular organisation of that one of our clubs is particularly involved with, where they've had to do a lot of restructuring with regard to their employment contracts and because of their funding and their contracts that are coming through. I haven't particularly heard about the changing them from paid employees to volunteer. I know Sylvia's had a lot to do with some of the Auckland groups. I don't know if you've heard of that, Sylvia.
No, I haven't heard of that. In fact, that's the first time I've heard of it.
Pay below the minimum wage. To retain everybody. That's what you're going to have to do. So this is what some people are affecting as an outcome.
Well, it's good to know, Marilyn.
Appealed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yes, it still means that people are being assisted, but it's not actually necessarily a good thing for those that are actually completing the work. They're still being undervalued and underpaid.
Yeah, precisely. And do you have members of Soroptimists who might have been involved in any of the pay equity claims? Teachers, nurses, probation officers, social workers?
We've got members in the teaching profession. Yes, they're in the pay equity. We do have some in the nursing profession, and so there's a variety. Yeah,
but so you're getting first-hand information.
Yeah, and we definitely do have a lot of other members that sit, are also volunteers with other organisations. That's where we get getting a lot of information about the funding, and the impact of the funding on organisations as well.
Thanks, Melanie. Lynn, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you so much for your submission, Melanie. Just in terms of, I note with your members, you're right, it is a double whammy because of the funding cuts or the grants, etc. In terms of staff morale and maybe, real mental health issues relating to your staff from this, is there any evidence of that amongst your membership?
Again, the particular one that I'm probably more aware of, only from the fact that I've sort of had quite a few conversations with this particular person, is that it really, really, well, it's an organisation that that has been. I just don't want to give too much away because it's all. I don't want to get them in any trouble for and have their funding impacted. But yeah, it's really the whole. They were really fortunate. They had monetary reserves. They could keep paying some of their staff while funding was delayed. That was a real impact. And for this particular Soroptimist member is. As a volunteer on the management team and has been for a number of years, and it was gut wrenching for them to actually have to close a branch. They, to actually change people's contracts, ask people to take reduced hours, maybe be made redundant. Nobody ever likes to have to do that, and that's. Yeah, and it's that whole juggle, and especially when the person doing it's a volunteer as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. I've got a question from Steve.
Thanks, Melanie. And just my question is, have you or Sylvia, if this is a project component of yours, have you canvassed your whole membership about the impact of the Amendment Act on their lives or families' lives?
I think it's something we definitely have in the pipeline at the moment. Yeah.
Melanie, your initial talk to us was more information from that included in your submission, and we'd be very grateful if you'd make that available to us as well.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
And we've been incredibly happy about the number of women NGOs who have stepped up to come to the People's Select Committee, and we will treasure what you have given us, and we will live up to expectations of what to do with it. So can I thank you and Sylvia very, very much,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
thank Soroptimist New Zealand.
Thank you, and thank you all on the panel for all the work that you're doing to actually make this public and make it a public conversation about what we need to change.
Kia ora.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Kia ora.
Our next submission comes from Platform Trust and Sally Pitts-Brown, who's the Chief Executive of Platform. Welcome, Sally. Okay, take yourself off mute.
How's that?
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So my name is Sally Pitts-Brown and I'm the chair of Platform Trust. Platform Trust is a peak body representing 95 member organisations across the mental health and addictions, NGO and community sectors in Aotearoa. We welcome this chance to restore democratic scrutiny to the Equal Pay Amendment Act 2025, which was passed under urgency and without consultation. Platform's members in the wider mental health and addictions NGO and community sector supports approximately 42% of all people accessing specialist mental health and addiction services. Our workforce includes over 5,000 full-time equivalent staff, with around 2,600 care and support workers, whom I'll refer to as support workers, of whom are women. These workers are essential, historically undervalued, and face gender-based pay discrimination. The Amendment Act abruptly discontinued 33 active pay equity claims, including 2 major support worker claims covering around 55,000 workers and a frontline manager's claim covering around 1,200 workers, many actively supported by Platform. Additionally, there were other workforces in our sector where settled claims had been implemented. The ongoing maintenance of these wages is now jeopardised, such as for nursing and social work. The claims discontinued had involved hours and hours of collaborative work between unions, employers, peak bodies and government agencies, all done in good faith and with the overall goal to address and remove gender-based pay discrimination for these workers and achieve fair pay for the work they do. This sudden and unexpected legislative change progressed under parliamentary urgency, invalidated this work, destabilised trust, undermined relationships, and reversed progress towards gender pay equity. This is a major backward step of which the trust and confidence with officials will take years to repair. Had the government engaged with all affected parties, a different outcome could have been achieved, particularly considering time and resources expected to engage in the pay equity process to date, and the significant evidence that had been acquired. A pragmatic solution was always available. The proposed changes came as a surprise. Up until the changes were executed, Health New Zealand had continued to work intensely with unions, peak bodies and employers on workforce data and other information needed to inform what a government contribution to a pay equity resolution might look like. They signalled support for a sector-wide solution right up until when the Act was passed. Our workforce is predominantly female, and this is not going to change anytime soon. For years, this workforce has experienced pay discrimination on the grounds of sex or gender. Support worker wage rates have now fallen below the living wage, and for entry-level support workers, below the minimum wage. Meanwhile, mental health assistants employed by Health New Zealand achieved pay equity in 2023, and as a result earned 20% more in environments where there are greater controls and supervision. We believe they do the same or similar work as support workers in our sector. Achieving pay equity now feels almost impossible. The Amendment Act has created an unnecessarily competitive environment, prompting some providers to increase wage rates for support workers without a formalised pay equity framework. This places additional strain on the sector and relationships with unions. Organisations already operate on tight margins and limited funding. Many cannot afford to self-fund but are desperate to retain staff. In the absence of a nationally funded and published mechanism to support fair and consistent pay, this has the risk of destabilising the system of care in the community. This could jeopardise the sustainability of services. These pressures threaten the continuity and quality of care for the people we support and their whānau, who depend on trusted, consistent and quality relationship with their support workers to maintain their mental health and well-being. Pay equity is not just a technical fix, it's a moral imperative. It speaks to the dignity of thousands of women who have dedicated their lives to supporting others, often in the shadows and without fair recognition. Support workers in the mental health and addiction sector are the backbone of community care. They work 24/7, helping people navigate some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. Their work reduces hospital admissions, supports whānau, and strengthens the social fabric of Aotearoa. The abrupt changes introduced by the Equal Pay Amendment Act have not only undermined years of collaborative investment and progress, but have also sent a message that this essential workforce, predominantly women, can be disregarded without consultation or consequence. We believe that our workers deserve to be paid for what they do and not where they work, and that employers should be funded to honour this. We urge the committee to restore trust, fairness and transparency, reinstate a pathway to pay equity that honours the voices of workers, employers and communities. We want to move forward together, not just to correct a legislative misstep, but to affirm the value of care, equity, justice and democracy in our society. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Sue Bradford. Yeah, off mute, Sue.
Kia ora, I'm doing the same thing. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for the submission, Sally. It's very strong in a lot of ways. I was curious about one thing on page 3 of the written submission. You talk about workers being employed on less than the minimum wage. Less than the current minimum wage. And I actually wonder, I mean, that's illegal. I'm wondering, is it actually still happening?
So, I mean, we've had no additional funding, but there are steps. We have a wage scale for support workers that was published pay rates, which is what created the kind of the, you like, and that's one of the things that's been undermined. So the first fell below the minimum wage, and employers themselves, I'm confident they will have addressed that, but that is what's happened as a result of waiting for the pay equity settlement. The support worker claim was one of the very first claims to be raised, and so when I talk about years, it was literally 3 years of waiting.
So, yeah, I mean, you talk about, I mean, the massive impact on the sector overall and the problems that arise when people look at people basically doing the same job in another part of the sector, but on the pay equity or much higher rates. Are there also issues inside organisations that are part of Platform in terms of some workers, for example, social workers being on the pay equity rate and community support workers not being on the rate? And they've gone through all this process, but there's still this massive gap. Does that actually create destabilisation and demoralisation inside the groups?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, the role of social workers is quite different to the role of support workers, but certainly, I mean, where we see the biggest impact of the social workers is that allied health workforce, for instance, did not have their pay equity claim, and so there's a relativity and, differential impact. So I think, our support workers believed us as employers. I'm the employer, I'm the chief executive of Pathways, so I was one of the employers in the claim. They trusted us when we said, look, we're going through this pay equity process. They could see the hours and hours of work that myself and others were put into it. So I think, they've trusted us. So it's also eroded confidence with employers who said, look, trust us, we're going to get this claim. We're 2.5 years down the track now, we're nearly there.
Sally, can I just quickly ask you, as an employer, are you a member of Industry New Zealand, Business New Zealand?
No.
Okay. So, Leanne.
Look, can I start by thanking you for your submission? I think it's one of the most important submissions that we've had. So, and I've got a particular issue that has arisen through considering what has actually happened, and that is this whole question of the obligation to really act in good faith. And when you're dealing as an employer with your employees, then that obligation sits there, but the government sort of kind of sits there as a funder, and you've highlighted this a lot, and incredibly acting in bad faith. So, and I just want to go to your submission where you talked about Health New Zealand continuing to engage in the process and reconfirming its commitment to supporting pay equity right up until the Amendment Act was passed. Now, I'm imagining that the employers that you represented committed a lot of resources into meeting the obligations and to provide the data that Health New Zealand no doubt was seeking. And I kind of want to get a handle on the claims.
Oh, look, and I can only talk really personally as that. And also, I guess flabbergasted is probably a word. It just seemed extraordinary. And I literally mean up to the day before we were involved of dollars on legal fees. The legal fees of working with the other peak bodies that were representing care and support workers individually as an organisation, our CFO, our finance people, the level of data that we had to submit, scrutiny, it got sent back, we had to resubmit, we had to attend. I probably used to estimate just myself 10 to 12 hours a week in pay equity meetings. And when I say compelled to do that, there was this sense of urgency. Every meeting was urgent. If you didn't attend, there was an inference that you weren't on board in supporting the pay equity process. There was a process that it felt like you got onto a treadmill and you couldn't actually get off, but you had to keep following down. So look, we've really struggled to quantify the dollar value, but legal advice, your CFO people, our data and IS people, meeting regularly with officials in Health New Zealand. The meetings with the unions were really intensive, and I'm talking regular catch-ups, but also we went through the whole pre-bargaining process. So we actually had a reasonably pragmatic solution that we thought was going to work and would still address pay equity. Yes, it had a big price tag on it, but actually it was evidence-based based on the framework we were using at the time.
look, I hate to do this because you've obviously committed so much time and effort to this already, but would you put together a timeline for us that just shows all of the meetings that you were attending, when you were engaging with Health New Zealand, when they were asking you for information? Because I kind of do want to focus when we report back on the question of good faith. And so for me, how Health NZ was relating to employers and unions in this period is actually critical to establishing whether they were acting in good faith or not.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Steve. You have a question.
Yes, fabulous submission. And in your oral component, Sally, you mentioned that you had a pragmatic solution. You got very near touching on what it was. Can you give us a little bit more about that, or even write to the committee? That would just be interesting for us to know. You sort of inferred it was a price tag, but we'd love to know that what you were offering, and did they listen?
Well, so it wasn't on, we were still in pre-bargaining because of all the milestones you had to go through. I mean, I'm not going to lie, the pay equity process was onerous. And so, but, you know, it was the process we were going through at the time. And so we had spent a lot of time as employers representing the 4 different sectors that were particularly in the care and support worker claim, coming up with a solution that we thought was going to be, as you know, address many of the pay equity components, but also be pragmatic. So I can certainly check that out and and get that to you.
Leanne, have you got another one?
Yeah, just a quick one, because it's a direct follow-up from the one from Steve. But I wonder if afterwards you could send us just your ideas about what an ideal process would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn. Yeah, you're on mute.
Goodness, we're all doing it, Sally. Thank you so much for your submission. Just in terms of your membership and appreciating all the work that's gone in, but also the reliance on the government funding, it is very brave of you to speak so, you know, eloquently and loudly about the issues. Would it be fair to say that with some organisations there's quite a fear about funding, etc., about being too vocal about these issues?
Oh, I think absolutely there is. It's a really uncertain environment. The majority of us, certainly in the mental health and addiction sector at the moment, have annual contracts. We know that the government is looking to make those multi-year contracts, but it's fairly volatile. The funded sector or the NGO sector relies on contract funding to meet all of your obligations, and the wages that you pay your workforce is one of probably the most significant in mental health and addictions. But yeah, your funding and the relationship with your funders is critical.
Well, it just makes you all the braver for coming forward. Thank you so much.
Sally, just a final question. You know, in your written submission, you've acknowledged increased powers for employers. So how does that rest with your sector? You know, you would suspect that employers would be very happy to have all of these options to not participate. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it touches on the previous question. Yes, there may be increased powers, but as a funded sector, you can only do what you can afford to do within your means. And so that relies on the contract funding coming in to be able to do that.
Well, it's a real chicken and egg, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
they can say, hey, no, we're not going to pay for pay equity.
Yeah.
In the contract.
Yeah.
I know that we've asked you for additional work, but as my colleagues have said, this is a very important submission. Thank you, and thank you to all of your members for this. And anything further after Leanne and Steve's questions that you're able to give us will be really helpful, but obviously we don't want to exhaust you in those things if they're not easily available. But
Yeah.
thank you so much, Sally, for coming to talk to us.
Thank you for your time. Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi. Our next submission is from Business and Professional Women National. And the submission is going to be presented by Cheryl Markey Brooks. I'm not sure if she is ready for us.
Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you and welcome to the People's Select Committee. Cheryl, it's fantastic to have such, as you all know, we listen to you, and then we've got two of your regional groups. It's wonderful to have this amount of input from Business and Professional Women, and thank you very much. Please feel free to speak to us. We have, of course, read your submission, and we'll question you after your presentation.
Thank you. My grandmother, my mother, and our woman today have all been promised pay equity, but we're still waiting. Kia ora e wahine mā, ko Cheryl Markey Brooks, tōku ingoa, no taira whiti e hau. I'm the Vice President of BPW New Zealand, and I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues with me today, Janet Gibb, President, BPW New Zealand, and Siobhan Dilley, Treasurer, BPW New Zealand. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. We represent Business and Professional Women New Zealand. We've been advocating for women's economic, political and social empowerment for over 90 years. Pay equity is critical, not just wages today, but women's long-term financial security, superannuation and independence. Undervaluation of women's work impacts whānau and communities, continuing cycles of disadvantage. We acknowledge progress in certain sectors, aged care, disability, social services, but gains have been slow, costly, and inconsistent. The current framework is reactive and not proactive. It relies on workers raising claims and long, resource-intense negotiations, often through courts. And this disadvantages the very workers that it's meant to protect. The result? A patchwork system with no central oversight. And the burden's unfairly placed on women to prove their work is undervalued. It should not be dependent on who can fight the hardest. It's a human right. So many of our members are in the education, healthcare and social services sector, impacted by the changes to pay equity claims. All of our members, in some way or another, are indirectly reliant on those who deserve a just pay equity process, including mums with kids in early childhood care, or schools and women with disabilities, or in homes who are reliant on care support or nursing. The legislative changes have a ripple effect. I want to share a brief story about a woman I spoke with recently. She's been an early childhood teacher for over 10 years, highly qualified, deeply committed, shaping the minds of our youngest tamariki, just like I have for the last 40 years. And yet she told me that some weeks she still has to choose between paying the power bill and filling a car with petrol. Meanwhile, her brother left school and went into a trade. And within a few years, he was earning more than double what she brings home, with far less responsibility on his shoulders. She said to me, I love my job, but sometimes I feel like society is telling me it doesn't matter. The pay equity needs a systematic and proactive solution. So BPW urges a central monitoring body, a clearer, fairer pathway, regular reporting and accountability. Now, one suggestion that I've been toying with is the idea of publishing an annual state of pay equity report to benchmark progress or lack of it. And this would provide evidence that can be used to challenge government inaction. The publication could be timed to coincide with International Women's Day in March, or Equal Pay Day, or Women's Suffrage Day. And it could be provided directly to the clerk of the House, so it's tabled as an official document. Any MP can help facilitate this. And it could be offered to the Parliamentary Library so it becomes part of official records and accessibility to MPs and staff. So pay equity is top of the list for BPW New Zealand. I'm going to leave it there so that we have an opportunity to have a conversation with the Select Committee for any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in your reflecting that the 2016 Joint Working Group Pay Equity Principles recognised it's essential that parties have access to adequate resources and information, assisting them in deliberations. And we've been told in some submissions that when the Pay Equity Task Force was disbanded, that left a lot of people up in the air, especially employers. One of and all of that information and experience that have been built up. Have you had any thoughts about that?
I might throw that out to my colleagues to see if they have any.
Yeah, I'm happy to, although
Thank you.
Marilyn, not with any great depth of knowledge or experience, I might add, I remember being part of the PECA Wellington, the Pay Equity Coalition in Wellington, and the really essential role that information and data had in informing pay equity claims and allowing them to proceed in an evidence-based way. So we would absolutely support that information is critical, that it is available and accessible in a just way, which means to all parties to a claim, and that is part of a process where parties are acting in good faith, and the resourcing to provide the task force. I mean, what would be required to go into a task force is it's all part of that investment in women and children, and the future of tamariki and rangatahi, and having economic independence and opportunity. So that's the comments I can offer.
Thank you. When you tell us that BPW is a gender expert with the International Organisation of Employers, you'll be aware that New Zealand was a real leader in this pay equity space, and lots of people were watching. And normally, if you're introducing such a major social change, you're allowed a few years for it to settle in. Is this the kind of thing that you would report to BPP International?
I'm happy
I
to.
think that the impact internationally when pay equity was thrown out was just wow.
Yeah.
They were in disbelief, just like we were. We were seen as forerunners for pay equity, and I feel that it's an embarrassment to the government, for a start, to let that ball drop. I don't know if you've got anything else to add, Siobhan and Janet.
We have a really strong international federation with clubs in over 100 countries, tens of thousands of members. So when New Zealand is present at our international congress, it is fair to say we punch above our weight, as New Zealand often does internationally. We'll often have 5 out of 8 or 10 international external resolutions at Congress. So every Congress, and these are every 3 years, we will have a resolution on pay equity. I think one of the last couple of Congresses, there was a resolution on pay equity at retirement and the impacts of the gender pay gap at retirement, for example. And one thing we didn't mention actually in our presentation is, and I'm not sure it's can't recall if it's in our paper, but we're also looking at the Equal Pay Act being updated to include an intersectional lens, and looking at legislating anti-discrimination based on ethnicity, disability, and so on under the Equal Pay Act. So when we take this conversation overseas, we certainly talk about. To be honest, I felt like it was hard work to work for pay equity, even before the changes that happened. It's a running battle, and I think in our CEDAW report in October 2024, in our executive summary, we wrote something like, New Zealand has always been touted as being gender equal. Well, that's been a battle we've had to fight from day one.
I just morning and acknowledge Marilyn and Nanaya people, Jackie, who have been involved with BPW before. And I just want to point out that New Zealand, we have won the Advocacy Award internationally in our organisation for many years. And we're really proud of that. But when we talk about equity, we're not just talking about females, women. We are wanting equity for all, and that does include male counterparts, because I recently heard some caregivers speaking on the Women's Day of Action. They're male caregivers, and they're doing this role. They're getting treated poorly as well. So, we have a balanced view about equity, and but of course we're a women's organisation, so we always come from that perspective. I just wanted to point out that, well over 100 years, and I'm preaching to the converted, after World War I, women were during World War I doing the male role. And as soon as the war finished, they were expected to go back to the kitchen. There has been well over 100 years of women fighting for pay equity. And so I don't know why in this day and age we haven't got there yet. I see this in my community, that women are unfairly paid, and they are not just working with less wages, but they're doing the child upbringing and all of the other things at home. So thank you. I applaud you all for doing this for us.
Kia ora, Janet. Nanaya, you have a question.
Yes, thank you very much for your submission and your presentation. I was quite interested in the last lot of comments you made with regards to recommendations around an independent body setting up a regular reporting cycle, that being done through the parliamentary process, but also a repository of institutional memory around pay equity issues, given how we're perceived as a country, and on women's issues in particular. I see in your submission that that perhaps we would benefit more if you've got some thinking about the nature of the independent body and how it relates to parliamentary reporting. And if you've got any further information there or want to make a comment, please do.
Thank you, Nadia. I haven't looked into it in any great detail, but I was just imagining this process has gone on for so long. It would be nice to be able to record our journey, and also to be able to have some kind of accountability annually or however often we want on the progress. I think it's another way of keeping it alive as well, because we can't afford for it to be slipped under the carpet. So I'm happy to delve in a little bit further and see what could happen or where we could go. I could take this back to our executive, which I haven't had a chance to talk to them about yet.
We'll leave the option open. If there is further information you'd like to send us around those ideas, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Kia ora. Well, thank you very, very much, all of you, both for your submission and for appearing today. And we're going to move on to the next BPW submission. And it's great to have the support of this organisation in this work we're doing.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Our next submission is from the Franklin branch of BPW, and Helen Balke
Kia
will
ora.
be
Thank you, Marilyn.
presenting that. Kia ora, Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that we're largely going to leave our written submissions to stand. Although one thing I did want to add to that was recommendations that we have in order about resolving the current situation. And BPW Franklin would like to see the re-establishment of the tripartite working group on pay equity to develop a set of recommendations on how the 2020 framework could be refined for more efficient claim processing. Secondly, an establishment of a database of work valuation interviews for desk-based research projects to inform future claims, and we understand that this was in progress. Thirdly, to ratify the contractual review timeline for claims that have been settled to date. And fourthly, to re-establish the 33 claims that were in progress at the time of the legislative change in May 25 to allow this process to be completed as it was begun in good faith. And so we'd really like to make ourselves available for any questions you have from there.
Well, kia ora, Helen. Thank you very much. I think in your submission, one of the key things that struck me was that you're right on to the fact that all the way through the legislation in the House, the government kept referring to employers as if it was someone or something other than them. And you're, you know, to have it like, okay, the government's either the majority funder or the majority employer, and it was disingenuous and misleading. How misled do you think the New Zealand public might have been through that, bearing in mind that Industry New Zealand, Business New Zealand immediately supported the government?
I think that the gender attitude survey has really illuminated that a lot of the attitudes around equal rights, and that includes pay equity, are not yet achieved. People think that it's no longer an issue because we did that already and things like that. So I think that the perception in the public is that this is not a big deal. They are largely unaware that there are still long-standing traditions of women being undervalued and dismissed as doing women's work. And I think that the proportion of unpaid work that's done by women is a key contributor to that as well. And I don't think that that's being addressed adequately in any sector at this stage.
Thank you, Helen. Steve, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thanks for being proactive about where we could go and put in our report, Helen. You talked about the database of interviews as being a very important set of information. Who collates that? Is it MB?
Well, that was being collated by claimants up until May. And I think that needs to be a central record because it's a large part of the cost and becomes prohibitive as logistically as well in putting these claims together. One of the things that I recently spoke locally on here is that when we're comparing to similar work, then we're only seeking to confirm the attributes of that work rather than individual people who are doing that work and may bring additional skills and talents. What is informative is comparing to different work, and that's what we have had removed from the process at this stage.
Thank you.
Nanaya.
Thanks, Helen, for your submission. I appreciate that, very thorough. I'm curious to know whether your local MP responded to the concerns that you raised on the issue.
He did not.
Thank you.
Sue.
Kia ora, Helen, and thanks very much for your submission, which was really interesting. And like Nanaya, I've picked up on the fact that you actually took action in cancelling an event with the Minister of Women and your local MP as a result of what happened. I mean, was there any reaction at all from the Minister?
No, there was an email that I believe. Sorry, no, I didn't include in the submission, but the submission was in response to his email, which was consistent with the media coverage of the issue at the time. And so we drafted those details and sent them through to him by way of explanation for why we were cancelling and why we weren't satisfied with the explanations given in the media at that time. So we've communicated that to him. He didn't respond again after that.
Are you aware of other BPW branches or other women's organisations around the country that may have taken a stand? Because it's the first time I think I've heard, I may be wrong, but of groups actually taking this kind of action in response. And I guess there's a question behind this for me about my outsider's perception of Franklin is it's quite a conservative district. But what's your feeling about women, and you mix with women from all parts of the community, including business women, like how the reaction politically is to women like Brooke Van Velden who have taken the stand on pay equity?
I think there's a general dissatisfaction with how women are viewed and women's rights are viewed by the current government. But Vicky will be able to add to conversations that she may have been party to locally. I think that largely among BPW, we had a convenient opportunity to be able to reinforce this communication by cancelling the event which we had planned. I'm not sure that other BPW clubs around the country had that opportunity, and we have made submissions from various local clubs as well as from BPW NZ, as you will have heard, of course. But Vicky, have you got anything that you've experienced that would add to that?
I know that recently I was a speaker at the local Rotary Club, and the whole issue came up about pay equity, and they had a number of women members there, and it is a conservative group, and all the women there said it is not right. So the general feeling was right through that women are being unfairly treated. Yes.
Kia ora, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky. Lynn.
Thank you very much. You more or less answered my question in the last two answers, but because I was going to ask about the broader community, and it's great to hear that that women across the board in business seem to be so enlightened about this and very vocal. It's been amazing, but I just wondered, what about the broader community? Because obviously we had some submissions where, you know, the impact of claims going through had such a dramatic effect on the economy. Like one of the examples was the number of caregivers who use their cars for work, who went out and bought cars. And obviously, you know, these effectively pay cuts would have an impact. And I just wondered if you've seen that amongst the broader community, both business and people on the street, really, what your feeling of awareness of the issue is.
I think that the broader reception of the whole change is not so much that there is a pay cut right now that's going to impact my ability to pay the rent next week, or put fuel, gas in the car this week, or before Christmas. But the fact that people who are struggling are going to continue to struggle, and this clearly indicates that that's not going to change in the near future, has a severe impact on the morale of the community. People are not feeling like the financial challenges and living costs are going to be more manageable in the near future, and that this is that doesn't look like any solution available in the upcoming months. So I think that's probably more evident. There's a lot of, while there is awareness amongst business women and people that I interact with, there is also a sense of helplessness and what can we do about this. So really appreciate the opportunity that you guys have offered us and being able to lend our voice to this effort.
Helen, I'm aware of sort of down the west coast, south of you, right? You get into some very extensive rurality, really. It's a lot of rural areas, and we're aware that care and support workers, Plunket support, midwifery, that more regional rural areas are very, very dependent on these workers. And I just wonder if is that commentary alive in the rural?
I grew up in Dannevirke and married my husband from Eketahuna, so very well acquainted with those rural areas. And there is very definitely a concern, a pervasive concern about resources being centralised into urban areas, and that particularly healthcare and medical services are not as easily available as they need to be in order to ensure people's safety and support. I think that as far as pay equity is concerned, outside of the industries that we know are affected by this, I think that that's possibly less of an issue in the rural areas because it becomes a little bit more meritocratic. But the rural areas cannot function the same in a lot of ways with these industries, the healthcare, the Plunket nurses, the support that do cover those extra miles and service those communities.
Yeah, I'm also, really aware that a number of organisations, who receive some forms of government support, but then have to go out to the community all the time, so that's where you just don't have the numbers that people in the city have. So you're going back to the same people again and again to sustain these services.
Exactly. And many people in rural communities wear a number of different hats for exactly those reasons. And my concern is that the people who are providing these key services and healthcare supporters are going to be forced to take on other work in order to make ends meet.
If there are no questions from the team, we thank you so much, Helen. This is again, I see in this, the comparative, the real difference between the understanding of the situation from a submission like yours compared with the debate in the House, which is just so far away from the reality. So it's great to have that voice reinforced. And thank you very much for your time and for the effort to put into this. Now we're going to go and visit another colleague of yours, Teresa Mee, from the Hawke's Bay branch of Business and Professional Women. Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you.
Helen, Teresa. Welcome to the People Select Committee. We have your submission, which we've read. We'd like to hear your opening comments, and then the team will have questions for you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm president of BPW Central Hawke's Bay, and our club does strongly endorse and support the oral submissions from BPW New Zealand and our sister club, Franklin, that I was just listening into, especially those recommendations about the next steps and actions that we can take to progress pay equity in Aotearoa. Our written submission was highlighting the story of Elise, who's a member of our club, and really as an illustration of the real world impact of those amendments on women in our community. But unfortunately, Elise wasn't able to join me this morning. But I'd like to share some of Elise's words with the committee, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So these are Elise's words. Day to day, I work as a support worker. I care for people with disabilities and or high needs. This includes helping with showering, dressing, toileting, cooking, medication, and getting to appointments or activities. A lot of the job is emotional support too, building trust and helping people feel safe and respected in their own homes or in supported living. It's physical, it's emotional, and it's skilled work. The 2017 pay equity settlement for care workers was a big step forward for us. It acknowledged the pay equity issues in our sector and gave us a raise that reflected the value of our work. But since then, there's been no follow-up to keep pace with the rising cost of living, inflation, rent, food, fuel, everything's gone up. But our pay has stayed basically the same. So in real terms, we've actually gone backwards. I was hopeful about the 2022 pay equity claim because it was meant to reassess what our work is really worth now and bring us back in line with fair pay. But the government's amendment to the Equal Pay Act basically cut that off before it could lead to anything. It feels like we were completely sidelined. After everything we've done, especially through COVID, when we were called essential, it's hard not to feel undervalued. Most of us are earning $29, and I think it should be at least $35 an hour, depending on qualifications and experience. But even at that higher end, it's not enough to live on comfortably, especially if you're in a city or you're supporting a family or having to pay for childcare. We do it because we care, but care work shouldn't mean struggling to make ends meet. So those are Elisa's words, and I really just wanted to see if there was any questions that the committee has on our submission.
Kia ora, Teresa, and thank you very much, Steve Chadwick.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. I'm an old Hawke's Bay girl once upon a time. But have you considered, as a movement, going to the women MPs or your own MPs and pointing out these really real impacts?
Yes, and I was really just commenting on what Helen was saying earlier about Franklin being relatively conservative. Central Hawke's Bay is relatively conservative too, but I was really heartened to see that our club was unanimous in wanting to do a submission. And yes, that is something that, and really supportive of Elise, but also of what BPW New Zealand was doing in the advocacy space on this. So yes, we haven't actually done that yet, but you're right, that's a great next step to lobby our local women.
The story is so compelling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost myself there for a moment. Teresa, it's a question you may have heard me ask Helen, and we're very interested in the impacts in rural areas. For example, we've had a lot of care and support workers tell us how it is there. Obviously, midwives, Plunket, a whole range of services are just so important for those areas. But if you're going to have differentials in pay for those workers, they're going to look for where they can get the pay equity settlement wages.
Indeed.
Have you got any sort of reflections on how this may impact in rural areas?
Probably, I don't have anything concrete to add, other than I am aware that in Central Hawke's Bay, recently there has been some layoffs, particularly of women in their 50s who have worked for employers, the same employer all their life, and are struggling now to find new employment in the community. And that has been something that we have been looking at, how to support those women, because a lot of them don't have the technical or IT skills to or experience of putting together CVs and going for interviews where they've never had to do that, and it is a growing what we've heard anecdotally anyway, a growing issue for older women in our community. That's to do with the economic situation.
Yeah. Leanne.
Well, I was probably most keen to ask you to pass on the committee's thanks to Elisa for allowing her story to be told. The words that I took from your submission was that what happened was not a bureaucratic setback, it was a betrayal, it was hurtful, and it was disrespectful. And, I just kind of wanted to say on behalf of the committee, which I've got no right to speak on behalf of, but I'm sure that everyone will agree that that we want to respect Elisa and people like her in those circumstances, which is one of the motivations for the committee. So thank you very much. It's not so much a question, it's really just a statement, pathetic as it is, but just to pass on to your organisation, thank you for making the submission, but more importantly, to pass on to Elisa how important her story has been.
Thank you. I'll do that. That's very much appreciated.
Jackie.
Thank you, Teresa. And I just wanted to ask, in Elisa's case or in other people you know of in that workforce, have they talked about exiting it and getting a job with better pay? I know we've heard in the past people might go to McDonald's who pay much better per hour, and that would be a terrible loss to the whole workforce. But has Elisa commented that she is actually seriously looking at exiting the workforce because of the pay?
Well, obviously I can't speak for Elise other than I can say that my understanding is that she sees this as a vocation, as a calling. And so, yes, that could be an option for some women, but for many care workers, this is something that they put their heart and soul into. And so, yes, I guess people might be considering that for practical reasons, but they really don't want to do that because this is something that has a lot of meaning for them as well.
Thank you. But are you related to Vicky, by the way?
Yes, I'm her daughter.
Lovely.
The small world of New Zealand.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and thank all of BPW for their submissions this morning. It's gives us great, rich texture to add to over 1,600 submissions that we've received. So we will really endeavour to do them justice in our reporting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're running a little bit ahead of time. Our next submission is from Angela Mayer. I'm not sure if she is available yet. Yes, Angela, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank
We've
you very
read
much.
your submission, and please let us know if you have more comments, and then we'll ask you questions.
Well, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. My name is Angela Meyer, and over the last 20 years, I've founded a number of feminist groups, including the Ace Lady Network, the Gender Justice Collective, and the Real Hot Bitches Dance Troupe. At present, I'm a co-founder of Project Gender, and I co-founded High Money with Rachel Davies. High Money uses feminist financial principles and therapeutic techniques to help get more money into the hands of more women. And in all the work I've done, one truth stands out. If women don't have financial equity, we simply can't have gender equity. To inform our High Money course, we commissioned the report, Rich in Context, How Culture and Community Shape Our Finances. surveying a gender balance sample of 1,150 Australians and New Zealanders to explore how societal, psychological, and behaviour factors impact financial well-being. I'm here today to speak about what I see as a gendered financial crisis in New Zealand, a crisis that profoundly affects women's financial well-being, mental health, and resilience in our communities. Women in New Zealand face persistent gaps across every aspect of financial life: the gender pay gap, the retirement savings gap, and the investment gap as examples. These gaps mean that women have less to save, less to invest, and less financial capability to provide for themselves and their families. And the consequences are stark. Women are more likely than men to carry higher financial stress, and that stress is acute. When women's relationship with money is heavily shaped by stress and anxiety. The number one word women associate with money is stress, whereas for men, it is hopeful. Nearly 3/4 of women experience financial stress that negatively impacts their mental health at least a few times a year, compared to 63% of men. Financial discomfort among women has reached record levels, with 62% reporting feeling financially uncomfortable compared to 51% of men. Worries about payday to payday survival and debt levels are now the highest recorded since tracking began in July 2019. And that is according to the Retirement Commission's Financial Sentiment Tracker. These persistent gender gaps exacerbate financial insecurity. 30% of women earn $50,000 or less, compared to 22% of men. Twice as many men as women earn more than $100,000 a year. Again, these are from the Financial Services Council report in 2024. And these gaps translate directly into lower savings and preparedness. Nearly 48% of women have no emergency. Nearly 26% of women have an established emergency fund that is sufficient or growing, compared with 33% of men. Again, these are from the Retirement Commission. And we know that women retire with 25% less than men. And those retirement savings gap widen sharply with age. This financial insecurity contributes to higher rates of homelessness amongst women compared to men. Women's financial well-being in New Zealand is low across the board. 80% of women rate their financial well-being as low or very low. 80%. In our high money research, many women said they watch every cent when they're stressed about money. However, over 1/3 of these said that this feels like a negative behaviour for them, highlighting how financial pressure can feel restrictive rather than protective. Money anxiety also has tangible impacts on work. An average employee loses 20 hours per month due to financial stress at work. And these disparities mean women have increased financial vulnerability at every stage of life. And these gendered gaps in income and savings drive acute financial stress. This is not just discomfort. This has real mental and physical consequences, including anxiety, sleep disruption, and impaired decision-making. Behavioural economics describe this as tunnelling, a phenomena where intense financial pressure shrinks mental bandwidth, forcing women to focus on immediate survival needs. Women describe feeling overwhelmed and constantly on high alert, unable to plan for the long term, invest, or save adequately. And this cognitive load limits engagement with retirement saving planning, KiwiSaver contributions, investment strategies, further widening the long-term wealth gap. It also undermines confidence and financial agency, reinforcing inequality across generations. The recent Equal Pay Amendment Act and the government's attribution of $12.8 billion to pay equity claims highlights both the enormous contribution of women's work and the lack of recognition for it. Much of this work, nursing, teaching, and social services, is predominantly done by women and has historically been undervalued. The legislation assumes an infinite supply of care work and expects women to subsidise the so-called caring professions because of their empathy or kindness or their vocational work. Yet the $12.8 billion figure demonstrates the critical economic value of this work, which sustains the health, education, and well-being of the entire country. The lack of genuine consultation with women in these sectors shows a deep disrespect for their contribution. Furthermore, economically, these high-growth areas where demand is rising faster than supply, meaning the undervaluation will have increasingly serious consequences for communities and the economy. If we don't pay people what they need and what they deserve, they will continue to leave these professions and this country in droves. The whole system will fall over. And this gendered financial crisis does not affect all women equally. Wahine Māori and Pacifica face a triple barrier: sexism, racism, and colonial violence. These inequalities intensify financial stress, reduce opportunities for saving and investment, and increase vulnerability to poverty. Financial stress is not experienced in isolation. It affects families and communities. Children growing up in households under constant financial pressure face educational and social disadvantages. The emotional and mental load carried by women also limits participation in cultural and community life, again perpetuating cycles of disadvantage. Women in New Zealand are navigating a financial landscape marked by persistent income and investment gaps, acute stress, and the undervaluation of their work. The Equal Pay Amendment Act and the $12.8 billion figure make clear both the essential economic contribution of women and the lack of recognition and respect for it. It's not just an individual issue. It's a social, economic, and community issue. Understanding the state of women's financial well-being and the stress, inequalities, and systemic undervaluation that shape it is essential to understanding the full impact of pay equity and the financial policy in New Zealand. Thank you.
Kia ora, Angela. Ria.
Kia ora, Angela. Your oral submission that you provided to the People's Select Committee today has really moved me, because everything you've said orally is absolutely what every other submitter has said to us as well. You have managed to calculate the stats and the information so succinctly that I was wondering if you could provide that to the Select Committee so that we can ensure that when we're doing our report back or how that looks and how that's shaped, that vital information that you've provided to us is both amazing and so informative. I wanted to touch base on one of the sentences you'd said. You said that women are facing a gender financial crisis, and you mentioned about retirement. And recently we've heard from the government they're looking at coming under pressure of raising the retirement age up to 72. So with all your wealth of knowledge that you have given us, would it be fair to say, what your thoughts are, that women under raising this retirement age will be unable to retire with dignity?
In a nutshell, yes. We're seeing that with this 25% gap, and that is widening as women are getting older. We haven't had KiwiSaver for a long time in New Zealand. It's only 18 years that we have it. So women who are closer to retirement age just haven't had the time, basically, to put money into their KiwiSaver and experience the benefits of compounding interest. I think, in talking with the Retirement Commissioner, obviously, there are fiscal pressures on our retirement system, but I don't think raising the age to 72 is going to be panacea for all the troubles. And I think, especially for Māori and Pacifica workers, people working in manual labour as well, it's too long. You can't, our bodies give out. And I think, especially for women, it's going to be a really big issue. I think there needs to be a lot more conversation about it, and actually a really strong gender lens put across any decision about retirement savings and superannuation and KiwiSaver. Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. And are you okay to send us through your oral submission that you gave us today? Because it was moving.
And it actually has the references on it. I just
perfect
cracked into the submission, but
thank you so much.
Thank you. Sue.
Kia ora, Angela. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I haven't heard of your organisation before, but it sounds amazing. I just wanted to ask a bit more about the survey you referred to, and I'm a bit unclear if there's one or two surveys, but am I right that your organisation itself had carried out one survey across New Zealand and Australia?
Yes, so High Money is, I run that with Rachel Davies, and she is a therapist. And so we commissioned a piece of work, Rich in Context, which is across Australia and New Zealand, and it's across all genders. We're actually launching that survey on the 7th of November, and I can invite you, and I'll be able to send the research and the report through. So I've just highlighted a couple of things that have come out of that survey.
Oh, kia ora, because that was going to be the follow-up really is, can we access it? So it sounds, once it's launched, we would be able to amalgamate that into the work we're doing, because it sounds so relevant.
Yeah, it's really, it's really interesting. One of the kind of key findings is the role of mothers actually around supporting financial well-being. And yeah, there's lots of great stuff in it, and I look forward to sharing it with you.
And just one quick book. I mean, how broad was it? Was it quite big in size? And
yes,
did it reach across all different occupational types?
Yes, yeah. We definitely,
so quite substantial.
Yeah, it's substantial, because the reason we did that survey was through the work that we do at High Money, and we work very closely with women to help them explore their relationship with money from a psychological perspective. And we just kept hearing time and time again how difficult it is for women to actually achieve financial freedom with this huge stress that women carry around money. So we commissioned the survey so that we were able to have some really good data that sits alongside all of the, we've spoken to thousands of women doing this work, so it's pretty robust.
Oh, kia ora. Thanks so much for doing that work and for being here today. Cheers.
Leanne.
Yeah, thank you very much for your submission, and I won't hold you up, because my question is around the Rich in Context report as well. And I mean, it might be quite helpful for us in terms of developing our reporting if aspects of it, or even an executive summary, were able to be made available under embargo. Because we'll be trying to, start the drafting process. So anything that you can send us under embargo that would help us pick up some of the elements of it, which we then can expand on when it's fully available, would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. And just the last question from Lynn. Mute, Lynn.
That's a recurring problem with me. Sorry, Angela. Thank you so much. I really, really loved your submission and what wonderful work you're doing. It seems ironic that so many women who care for people in their retirement age aren't going to have that security when they reach it themselves. But I just wondered, in terms of all the extensive research work you've done, if there's been any comparators with the effect on women, perhaps across maybe rural sectors. Have you done any?
A lot of the women who have done High Money or who have been through our program, not specifically around the rural sector, to be honest. We notice that it doesn't really, it doesn't it's not so much about how little or how much money you have. Everyone has a particular relationship with money, and there's slightly different kind of stresses depending on what your bank balance is really. So we haven't. No, I can't really say with any certainty the difference between urban or rural women's relationship with money. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Angela, that's a really rich submission, and it's going to be very generous to be able to have the information that you've collected. And thank you very much for your submission to us and all the other work that we know you are doing to assist with pay equity. It's, yeah, thank you very much. We're going to have a short break before we resume in 10 minutes. Thank you, team. just waiting for the others to return after a short break. Nanette Cormack is presenting the library assistant claim. Next. Is Nanette available? Nanette, welcome to the committee. Kia ora, and thank you very much for your written submission, which we have read. And you may be aware we're hearing from a number of librarians, which is very good because they're some of my favourite people in the world. So would you like to proceed with your oral comments, and then we will follow up with questions? Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Marilyn. Kia ora koutou. My name is Nanette Cormack. I'm the Pay Equity Advisor and Advocate at the Public Service Association. And I was one of the advocates for the pay equity claim for library assistants raised with 6 local government councils. Library assistants are typically low paid. And an example of that is that councils who adopt the living wage, where that happens, the pay for library assistants is actually often lifted. So library assistants typically earn between the minimum wage and the living wage. Over the course of our investigation, we showed that the value of their work is much higher than that. And like many of the roles that operate in the social services sector, growing societal pressures mean that the needs of the community are growing more significant and complex. And with library assistants being very much frontline social services workers being affected by that increase in complexity and demand. Our claim for the 6 councils had progressed until almost the end. And so it was particularly galling that the government cancelled the claim. We were at the stage where we had filed in the Employment Relations Authority for fixing because we were unable to reach agreement about the correct pay equity rate of remuneration. But we had done all of the work of the claim up until that point. So obviously we would like to see the changes reversed, but we actually would also like to see the legislation strengthened to ensure that pay equity is actually achievable for groups like library assistants. There's just a couple of areas that I wanted to focus on in relation to that. And the first is that multi-employer claims are able to be raised and progressed effectively and efficiently. This was a claim for 6 local government councils, and we found that they were not well resourced, in order to be operationalise our claim. And the reason that multi-employer claims are important to library assistants is because the reality is that even though library assistants around the country are low paid, those who work and live in the bigger centres tend to be paid more than those who live and work in smaller regional centres. Even though the value of their work is the same. And there are other occupations, and we can think of health workers or education workers, who earn the same rate of pay no matter where they live in Aotearoa. And we think that library assistants deserve to be in that category as well. And so, as I mentioned, the second point is around resourcing support for pay equity claims, centralised resourcing. And as I said, local councils, the 6 that we were working with, were not really well resourced in terms of being able to logistically work through that claim with us. They had no expertise in pay equity. And so therefore the claim relied really heavily on the staff and resources of the Public Service Commission Pay Equity team. And so we feel strongly that in order for pay equity to be achievable outside of the public sector, there must be resources and expertise available to employers and workers going forward. So they're the points that I wanted to emphasise out of our experience.
Thank you, Nanette. Steve, you have a question.
Oh, thank you, Nanette. Essential work and love. I don't know why they're called library assistants. They do so much more than that. So, but that's a scope issue. But of the 6 TLAs that you've been involved in, have you seen any perverse behaviour as a response of the pay equity amendment announcement in terms of restructuring and loss of jobs?
But so, like many organisations, local councils are often going through rounds of restructuring, and library assistants are not exempt from that. And one of the patterns that we see with library assistant work is that councils identify that they might be able to make savings by centralising function, and so we might see library assistants then becoming almost like a service centre for the whole council. So operating where they might take in rates or parking fines or dog fees, or those sorts of arrangements. But then as many of us experience, the tides turn, and then someone might think, oh well, actually we need specific functions, and so then that work then gets taken. So it's a bit like a tide that we see with change processes everywhere. What we actually have seen, so not so much perverse outcomes, but what we actually have seen is that some of the councils who were involved in the claim, who were working alongside us doing the investigation into the value of the work, have actually acknowledged that they are underpaying those workers. And so we have seen some of the councils actually uplift the wages of those working in the library. For some of them, it's those only covered by the claim. For others, it has been everyone who works in the library. So we have welcomed that. Our position is they haven't uplifted them to a pay equitable rate, but of course we welcome that they are prepared to give more money to those amazing workers.
Thank you.
Question from Sue.
Kia ora, Nanette. Great to hear from you and from the library assistants again. My question is really around what happened with Auckland Council that came out last week. Did that help your response? I know it's only rough, but did it meet generally the expectation of where the pay equity claim may have taken you? I realise it can't be exact or anything, but
yeah, for us, no. I mean, where we had got to in the claim was that the union had identified what we thought was the equitable rate, and we got there by using the average of the pay of the comparators that we used. Library assistant work came out valued as either the same as or higher than all of the comparators that we used. So we felt that an average of their pay, of their remuneration, was equitable. The employers counter-offered with the rates of the lowest paid of the comparators. And so that is why we were unable to reach agreement and why we went to the authority. And so where these uplifts are is that they are either very similar to the lowest paid of the comparators or maybe slightly higher, but still nowhere near what we believe to be the equitable rates.
Kia ora, thanks for that's really interesting. Further to this is it public knowledge and I may have missed it, but are there actually named, publicly known other councils that have done something similar to Auckland?
So Christchurch have done the same, and I understand that one other council is working through that process, but I shouldn't name them, I don't think.
And these are all the 3 councils that you've been part of working through the process. So
They were three of the 6.
So while it's not getting where people wanted to get to, at least it's stepping, and all that work, thank goodness, is not for nothing. I hope the committee doesn't mind if I just ask one more question, and that is, I'm really aware of the impact on Auckland libraries of the homelessness situation in Auckland, and the fact there's basically a homelessness camp outside the library every night. And just very briefly, can you talk about the impact of that on the people that work at Auckland Library?
So very, very much over the last few decades now, libraries have been the only free social space for vulnerable people in our communities to go to, whether they are affected by homelessness, whether they are affected by mental health, whether they are recent migrants looking for community and social service support. All of those people are being cared for by library assistants. So the majority of library assistant work is actually around providing the provision of social services, rather than what you might typically think of, giving a recommendation about a book, and so that was one of the reasons why their work came out valued so highly, is because of the enormous scope of the work they do, whether it is, reading time with children, whether it is working with, people who are suffering from societal pressures.
Sure, thank you very much to you and everyone that works with you on this.
Joe, you have a question.
Kia ora, Nanette, and thank you very much for your submission. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the 6 councils that you have been working with your pay equity claim. Have you looked at district councils and what they're doing there with their library staff?
Yeah, so our intention was always that we would settle the claim for the 6 councils, which would establish the equitable rate for library assistants, and then we would work on a model of trying to roll that out for the rest of the country. And unfortunately, we never got there. So, as the legislation stands at the moment, there's probably very little opportunity to get equitable rates for library assistants, whether that's regionally or not. But yes, we are very mindful of the fact that there are, women out there, doing it very hard out in the regions.
Hilda, thank you.
Jackie.
Hi, thank you for your submission. Very quickly, what's the size of the workforce for library assistants in New Zealand, and generally speaking, what would be the ratio of librarians to library assistants in a library?
Look, I think that I'll go to the ratio. I think it might depend on the library, but I think generally there would be more library assistants than librarians. Librarians nowadays tend to be quite specialist roles, where they might be often in charge of things like either specialist areas of knowledge or things like purchasing, and often a librarian might not be scheduled to work on the desk. So mostly the people that you see working on the desk in libraries will be library assistants. And yeah, I would say that there in most libraries would be many more library assistants than librarians. In terms of the numbers, we're talking, I would say, 10,000 or more, probably, local government are one of the biggest employers of library assistants, but also universities and schools and some public service departments. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, can I just ask you, please, about if you can let us know in writing, if it's easier afterwards, what your selected comparator groups were and what the percentage scoring was for those
I'll
profiles.
make that available to the committee after this. I'll write it down and send it through to you.
That would be fabulous. Thank you very much. I think between all the librarians who have been talking to us, we now have an incredible and extensive list of all the various things you may be asked to do or have to do in a day. So thank you, and we really hope, Nanette, in our report that we'll be really able to honour all that the librarians have told us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Our next submitter is A2 staff from Longview Home. I believe they are ready. Who's here for us?
Hello.
Winnie, welcome. Welcome. And I think there's a number of you, Alexis, Vicky, Ashley, who work at Longview, who are going to make a presentation for us this morning. We're very grateful you're taking out the time to do this with us. I hope to goodness you didn't have to take leave to do this for us. So welcome, and please go ahead to talk with us. We have 10 to 15 minutes.
Awesome, thank you. Kia ora and Malailele committees. My name is Winnie Mamala and I'm one of the campaign organisers here at E2 Union. The aged care workers is primarily workers who provides essential caring services to enhance clients' well-being, quality of life and dignity. Before becoming an organiser, I was a caregiver for over 5 years. I lost my partner to cancer in 2020 during COVID, but I didn't have time to grieve with my son because I was working 14-hour shifts, 7 days a week, just so I can make enough money to pay for my mortgage and make ends meet. Last year was the first year out of the aged care sector, and it was also the first year I spent Christmas with my kids for the first time. I have 3 member leaders here who works in the aged care sectors and will now be sharing their stories. I would like to introduce Alexis Stanley.
Hi there, good morning to our ladies on the People Select Committee. Good morning. I come to you as a healthcare assistant with over 20 years of experience, predominantly within a level 3 dementia unit, where I've cared for up to 21 residents at a time, all presenting with their own complex needs and very challenging behaviours. My submission today is made in support of strengthening and protecting pay equity for all healthcare assistants and to highlight the realities of the work that we do, the immense value we provide and the personal toll it takes when we are not properly recognised. As a healthcare assistant, we bring with us a deep and broad knowledge of thousands of health conditions, and their interactions and critical risk factors that can mean the difference between escalation and prevention. I have personally witnessed how this knowledge has saved lives through recognizing early warning signs, preventing medical crises, and ensuring residents receive timely and appropriate interventions. These skills are not unskilled labor, but are essential frontline healthcare competencies that require experience, critical thinking, and ongoing vigilance. The physical demands of our role are extreme. On a daily basis, we are responsible for safely transferring immobile residents, often weighing more than 100 kilograms, from their beds to the toilets to chairs multiple times a day. This repetitive high-risk manual handling has caused countless healthcare assistants, including myself and my colleagues, life-changing injuries. Despite adhering to safe moving protocols, the toll on our bodies is undeniable. My own journey in healthcare began quite young. I worked throughout all 3 of my pregnancies, often over time, while trying to support my own little family. Prior to the historic pay equity case that was won through the tireless efforts of Christine Bartlett and many others, I worked up to 13 or 14 shifts a fortnight just to keep my head above water with the bills, rent, utilities, etc. And that was often full term. I was able to focus, but a short time after that victory, I was able to focus on my children, able to provide extracurricular activities, to present as a mother, to be present as a mother, instead of constantly exhausted and financially strained. But with the government now moving backwards on pay equity, that small measure of fairness we gained is at risk of being stripped away. Working in aged care means giving all that we have and all that you are to some of the most vulnerable members of our society. It means every day, even in the face of physical and verbal abuse, because you know those residents depend on you. But when you are not valued, not respected, and not paid your worth, the strain becomes unbearable. I love my work. I love the residents that I care for, and many of my fellow women in healthcare feel the same. We give our hearts, we give our strength, we give our skills. But I must ask, when will this government finally recognize the extraordinary contributions of healthcare assistants? When will we be acknowledged as professionals we are, and that when will our pay reflect the true value of the essential work we do? Pay equity is not just a matter of fairness from dominated industries like aged care. It's a matter of justice. It's a matter of dignity and sustainability for the entire healthcare system. Without it, our workforce will continue to be undervalued and driven away, leaving the most vulnerable members of our society at risk. So I do urge our committee to please help to uphold and protect the pay equity for all healthcare in the healthcare system, and to ensure that our voices are heard. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Ashley.
Good morning, committee. My name is Ashley, and I'm here as one of thousands of aged care workers who have been affected by this change to pay equity. I'm a young mother with a 2-year-old, and I have worked as a level 4 caregiver for over 10 years, mostly with hospital level aged care, providing care to people at their lowest or sickest, and making their last years or weeks on earth as enjoyable and fun as I can. We become the eyes and ears for some of these residents and become their families when their own are no longer around. I have been present for some residents who are in their last moments, some being peaceful deaths and others being far from it. I work in hospital level aged care. It comes with a vast range of complex health issues, from physical issues like strokes, MS, ALS, and others, as well as others like mental health issues or dementia. Most of these cross over with each other. These issues need on-the-spot thinking at times, when residents have sudden changes in their normal selves. Are these changes because of their condition, or is it an infection, or have they started on the end-of-life pathway? I have had a resident swing a large pair of fabric scissors at me who had dementia. This behaviour was because of a sudden change. They went from an easygoing, happy person who had never been violent in their lives to this. This change was because they had started on the end-of-life pathway. This situation required quick thinking to de-escalate and disarm the resident to keep both of us safe. These quick thinking skills cannot be taught in a 2-week orientation to someone who is new and never experienced the complex and rapidly changing conditions. This leaves the inexperienced staff in danger, and they end up leaving very soon after or asked to move to work in a different area. We get verbal abuse from residents and their family members because their loved ones' needs aren't being met in a timely manner. As we have been busy with a fall, helping give medication to another resident who is actively dying, and we're supporting their family through what is happening as their resident is in their final moments. and are trying to keep the bell times to the recommended time frame of within 5 minutes and no longer than 10. In the last 18 months, I have been part of 2 restructures at my current workplace. At this point in time, I am going through my second one and do not know if I will have enough hours of work to pay my bills or a job by the end of this year. With ongoing restructures, my role as a level 4 caregiver has had a substantial increase to the workload, and my pay does not reflect all the additional responsibilities and stress. With many restructures happening across the country and whole industry, this has created a huge issue with job stability. These jobs are no longer looked at as full-time careers anymore. With all the changes like job cuts and companies no longer wanting level 4 caregivers, it makes it hard to find another job in the industry. With the continual changes to shift times and days, it's making getting childcare harder, and I do not want to miss out on seeing my child grow up. I have seen the positive changes that came when we got pay equity in 2017. We had staff who could save up and buy their first home, get a better car, or go on that long-awaited holiday. It gave people a sense of pride to get more education to achieve their levels.
Good morning, everyone. Kia ora, my name is Vicky. Thank you, Ashley. I'm a level 4 caregiver and a migrant worker. And I speak not just for myself, but for many who share this journey in the aged care. I want this committee to see the real work that happens every day, not just for us, but for the residents who cannot speak for themselves. Here's what I do at my work. Being a caregiver, I monitor vital signs to catch early signs of strokes, diabetics, and also heart attacks. I administer controlled drug medications. I manage the feeding for the residents, and I do treat wound care to the residents. I use restraints only as a last resort, respecting the dignity of people living with dementia. And also, my facility is a restraint-free facility. I reposition residents every 2 hours to prevent pressure injury source for them. I manage continence care for them, and I safely lift people over 100 to 120 kilograms, sometimes with the hoist, sometimes while being physically or verbally abused by a dementia resident. I am trained in with 15 plus clinical competencies, nursing level life-saving skills, but the system treats us as if this expertise has no value. If I leave for a warehouse job, I earn about the same, with no liability, no emotional drama, and no life hanging in the balance. But where does that leave our residents? When experienced caregivers leave, who teaches the next ones? I spend months mentoring new staff only to see them walk away with less stressful work that pays the same. We are losing clinical expertise and the residents are paying the price. Sometimes after 1 p.m., after the recent restructuring from my employer, it's just 2 of the staff for 25 residents on a hospital level wing where when a resident has a fall, when another one has low blood sugar and another one can't breathe, I have to try it like an emergency nurse, but I'm paid as if I'm just helping with getting them dressed for the day. I am part of a critical workforce. 45% of caregivers in our sector are on visas as of 2023 data. We are afraid to speak up about unsafe staffing because our residency depends on our employer. This silence is dangerous for us and for the people who we care for. This is not just about wages we are talking about. It's about what residents lose when we are treated like shelf packers instead of healthcare professionals. It's about dignity, safety, and lives. It's about we as caregivers who are preventing the residents from all those hospital admissions, not through the equipments, but through skilled and all those personal attentive cares to them. Experienced caregivers are the frontline defense against harm. But we can't stay when we are undervalued. Fair pay is not charity, it's recognition that care work is healthcare work, complex, skilled, and essential. If this continues, residents will face preventable injuries, untreated pain, and loss of dignity. They will pay the price with their safety and their well being, and sometimes with their lives, despite them paying more and more to the aged care providers month on month. Please recognize the value, honor the expertise, support the caregivers, because when we are seen, respected, and retained, everyone benefits. The committee now has the chance to end this undervaluation for our residents and for all of our New Zealand's most vulnerable. Choose dignity, choose safety, choose care, because real change, not just words, but action. This is the story, these are the facts, and this is the choice. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Each of you and each of your presentations this morning has given us a great deal more than your original written submission. And so I'm going to ask you, Winnie, if you could possibly collect what we've been told this morning from each person and send it to us. It's extremely helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes?
We're now open for questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Lynn.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you've done. I'm sure everyone on the committee knows firsthand through relatives how important your work is, and believe me, we know your skill, we know your value, and we all think the world of you. So thank you for that. But I'm going to ask a bit of a personal question, and if you don't feel comfortable answering it, that's absolutely fine. But I just wonder, in terms of your the work that you do and which you've told us so clearly, the pay that you get, do you find it quite a struggle to even maintain your KiwiSaver payments looking for the future? I mean, it probably comes out of your wages, but is that even quite difficult for you when you're trying to make ends meet?
Yes, definitely. When KiwiSaver was first initially introduced, I actually did not opt in for many, many years. It wasn't until, personally, it wasn't until I had to start thinking about retirement and not just that, but having something to at least pass down to my children. But I've had to actually put that on hold. So I think I've only had KiwiSaver personally for a total of 3 to 4 years, and I had to opt out of it. It was just becoming too much, especially living paycheck to paycheck.
Thank you, Alexis. Anybody else?
Can I just say, Alexis, thank you so much for that, because that's been something that has been concerning me. We often talk about how little the contribution is over the years because of the low pay, but you've, by being so honest, have said directly, you know, how impossible it is sometimes even to maintain your KiwiSaver contributions, and that's absolutely tragic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ria.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Ashley, Alexis, and Vicky, giving us your real life stories in a profession that you clearly are very, very passionate about and love what you do. It's unfortunate that you're not being rewarded in terms of pay for what it is exactly that you do with your high school levels. So I appreciate your stories. I wanted to pick up on you, Vicky, when you mentioned that you are a skilled migrant in a job and you gave us a skills rundown of what you do. But you mentioned the fact that you rely on your residency through your employers. Have you spoken to other skilled migrants, and is there a general fear that because the care and support sector is very hard to work within and low wages, that there would be a consideration to change employers or move out of the sector? And if so, are you being, what's the word I'm trying to find? Are you being deliberately squashed for talking out negatively about it?
Thanks, Ria. Yes, I know many migrant caregivers who are scared to speak up about unsafe staffing or pay because literally, and it's true that our visas depends on our employer. Some have even left the sector for better pay and job security. And yes, there's a real fear of being punished or losing our jobs if we raise concerns. Um, because we're on accredited employer work visas, many of us avoid raising health and safety issues. We skip union activities or changing employers because we fear visa jeopardy. So serious risks go unreported. Okay. Yes, and many of us we feel like we can't raise concerns because our visa and pathway to residency rely on the employer. So even using internal reporting or union notes, people are feeling that risk, fewer shifts they are getting with the roster changes or with the contracts not being renewed by the employer. All these are withheld. So the protection for migrant whistleblowers, if they say, or portability between accredited employees is critical. And even using those internal reporting feels risky because I'm seeing it in front of my eyes. I'm an A2 delegate, so now I'm trying to give them support. I'm being a migrant, giving them a support that it is legal. We are backed by the unions. So issues get buried until there's a harm. A safe visa independent whistleblowing channel, or protections are very urgently needed for migrant healthcare assistance. And yes, even using all those internal reportings or those union channels feels risky when hours can be cut or contracts are not renewed after speaking up. There is a real step back from migrants. There is that fear. We need explicit protections for migrant workers and easy visa portability between accredited employees, so workers can change jobs without jeopardizing residency. Without that, serious risks go unreported, and resident safety is suffering.
Kia ora, Vicky. That's a very important contribution to our work. It's one thing to read it on the page. It's another to have somebody who's living it come and tell us about that. This has been a very important group of submissions. Alexis, Winnie, Vicky, Ashley, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of one of the most vulnerable groups that are hit by this change in the law. And yours has been a very constructive addition to our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn.
And all these changes do protect residents by making it safe for us to report all those risks, I would say. Thanks.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are moving to the Village at the Park group. These are a group of family and friends of residents in care at retirement villages in Wellington. Is it Therese who's here?
You are, we're on.
Fabulous, you are. Jill, Therese.
And Marie. Kia ora.
Marie. Thank you very much. Kia ora. This is a very important submission because we've heard so much from the workers, but to have people who daily observe how much they do and what they do is very important to us. And yours is the first voice that's come in like that. Because I imagine every day almost you're seeing this work. So we look forward to hearing from you right now, and then we'll have questions.
Kia ora, Marie Russell here, and I will introduce Jill and Therese in a moment. But first of all, warmest thanks to the committee for your brilliant innovation of a People's Select Committee. It's a really great thing that you've done. And tautoko completely to the two presenters. Our group is Village at the Park Aged Residential Care Group, and we are working alongside E2 and the nurses organisation as well on this issue. So I'd like to first introduce Dr. Gillian Greer. She has a distinguished background in human rights and women's health rights in Aotearoa and also globally. Jill doesn't live at the Village at the Park, as Therese and I do, as independent residents, but her partner is in care here, and she's been visiting her virtually daily for the last 17 months. So Jill does see what you said, Marilyn, that what happens in aged residential care. So I'd also like to introduce Therese O'Connell, who's going to speak after Jill. She's been in the struggle for working women's rights for, I think, over 55 years, Therese.
Yeah, still looks so young.
And she was part of the group of radical young feminists that worked within the trade union movement for the Working Women's Charter of 1980. And there was a lot of work to do within the trade union movement at that time. I myself have a background as a social researcher, most recently in public health. But I'll hand over first to Jill.
Thank you.
Gillian Greer.
Just move.
Kia ora, and thank you so much. I just join in congratulating you all for this initiative. It's just so great. As some of you may know, when I was Director General of International Planned Parenthood, working across 160 countries and family planning here, I had some experience of health, although I'm not a doctor, but I learned a great deal from doctors and nurses at that time. Now my view is a completely different one in many ways, and I just want to speak about it a little bit, and thank you for the opportunity. My partner, who is a writer, a musician, a playwright, a poet, and an extraordinary woman, is 12 years younger than me. Several years ago, she began to show signs of dementia. She sat up one day and said, well, before I die, I want to go to England again. So that was a challenge, but it was nothing compared with the challenges that were going to follow. Yes, she developed dementia at the age of 63 and lived at home, thanks to friends and to Wellington Hospital staff who kept real care in place in all sorts of ways. But when she began to run away to visit friends who didn't know she was coming, it got to be too difficult. And in the end, it was decided that a move into care was inevitable. And that has been really hard for her and for me and for her whānau, but her friends keep coming. They formed the Friends of group and come regularly. And she plays the flute much better than she's ever played before. Now, work that one out. But in other ways, she has become confused and varies from day to day in terms of conversation. She is fit as can be. In fact, has blisters on her feet because she keeps walking, looking for what she can no longer find. And so as I sat thinking about this yesterday, in a room with probably 20 residents in it, with music playing and various things happening, a bit of shouting at times, I thought about all of this. And I thought about the fact that she would never have wanted to go into care, but it was inevitable. And there is so much that is done for her on a daily basis in so many ways. And I can't express my recognition of the part that's played. And I think that the recent legislation was passed without consultation. It was passed without sufficient consideration. And I cannot imagine the life of those people that I spend time with every day if the caregivers and the nurses were not there. It would be impossible. And I'm just so thankful that we have them and that we are able to afford them when many others cannot. and I cannot envisage how that is. And we still have many friends who visit on a daily basis. But it is relentless, the work they do, providing physical, psychological care, meeting demands that are unbelievable in so many ways. And I think to myself, what value do New Zealanders place on this? The people who created the opportunities for women in this country and for men, what would they say if they could see what it is like for some of our most vulnerable in this situation? And what is needed to recognize the people who provide the care and the support by way of training and by way of sufficient pay. There is too much of a gap between what they do and what they earn and the gratitude that many of us have on a daily basis. Thank you very much for your time.
Therese. Kia ora, everyone. Lovely to see your faces up the side here. Yeah, so I'm a obviously older person living in a retirement village, and we as older people living as independently, as it is termed, in our retirement village, we really care about pay equity for care staff, because we have not only have we loved ones who are in care, but one of the reasons for a number of people coming to this particular village was because there's a dementia unit and there's a hospital. So they saw it as something that they could be prepared to go into. And of course, we feel we're potential users of the care services. So we've actually got a real, we've got real skin there. The interesting thing for us is that we have taken quite a strong stand to the village owners or managers about when they decided to change, cut down hours. I think it was in preparation for them selling the business to American business, which of course is happening more and more in aged care, in residential facilities. And in doing that, we as residential independent livers put it to the management that this was a matter for us to be concerned about. There was no way that they were going to allow that to happen, because of course their model is they separate their businesses. So the business that takes care of the hospital and the dementia unit is separate to the independent living part. Of course, it's not in fact true. It's just for the books and it's for them to do their financial stuff. And all their talk, which is always glowing about we're a whole community, we're a beautiful community, is for naught when it comes to that. So we worked, and Marie will talk about that, with A2 and the Nurses Union to bring notice to what was going on with the cutting of staff hours in the care facility. And last year, 2024. So we've got some experience now of what's actually happened. So, you know, I just wanted to say also in response, listening has been wonderful actually to hear the other people speak about it. It strikes me as somebody who was around at the Equal Pay Act 1972, that that act may well have been one of the problems, so to speak, for what's happened now. And that I know I went for a job as a clerk in the Wellington City Council, and the job, they would not give me the job as a clerk because it was for men. But during the negotiations for the Equal Pay Act, they created clerical assistant, and that's where they put the women. And it just suddenly struck me today, I wonder if anyone does any research into when did this term assistant, because we've got health assistants, care assistants, library assistants, you know, has this, I mean, it would be so interesting to see whether that has been part of the, I was going to say bullshit, but it's actually not that, it's actually the machinations of basically, you know, capitalism and actually trying to stop having rights for women. So I'm just putting that out there because my own experience has shown that this word assistant came in and now I see it everywhere, and it's always where women are always lower paid. So, you know, and I think the ageing population, which we are some of, even though some of us try and hide it, requires urgent pay equity and improvements in the care sector. Thanks for your work.
Yes, just to sum up, there is an ageing population. These issues are only going to get worse as time goes on and need to be addressed urgently, we feel. So have you got any questions for us, any of us? We can't hear you.
Steve, sorry.
Yes, what a fantastic collective that you are together, and thanks for your advocacy. Do you manage to get in to see the management of the village?
Not me.
I do on a regular basis because I'm on the residents committee, and I also have a good relationship with the village manager. So, yeah.
And have they been free and frank with you about the impact on the workers in the village?
No, because that would be more than her job was worth.
Right. So
we raised it at the AGM last year.
Yes, we
did.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and keep advocating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Kia ora. Leanne?
Kia ora. Thank you very much for your submission. Great to see you, Jill and Therese, I know. Therese, you and I were on the National Council of the FOL in 1970-something. I was one of 4 women, you were one of 4 women, so there you go. But that was not my point. My point was going to be that I had never thought of assistance in that way before. And for you to say that you applied for a clerk's job and then all of a sudden, and probably because of the Equal Pay Act, the phrase clerical assistant came about. It's really struck a chord, and I mean, it's going to send me off into a sort of rabbit hole, I know. But if you've got any more thoughts on that, it would be great to have it in writing. And if you've done any sort of more thinking about it, or do some more thinking about it, potentially some research on it, again, that would be great to receive. So, but thank you. It's a very powerful submission, and love to you, Jill, as well.
Kia ora, thank you. Ria, you have a question?
I do, and a comment too. I love your hair colour, so and I love your spunk and how you share with us what you've done inside of your retirement village. Jill, thank you so much for your story and the struggles faced with your partner and what that looks like for her future going forward. But I just wanted to pick up on your submission under point 16. It's something I questioned the previous submitter on, with migrant workers being tied to the employer for their pathway to residency. You've mentioned in there that while key staff people are hard to find, they're replaced with agents that come through. How have you found that that's impacted on the care, if it has? How have you evidenced this? Like, what sort of things have you seen happen?
Do you want to speak to this, Jill, or should I?
I could just say briefly, I think that we've been extraordinarily lucky and fortunate to be able to employ people who are so open, so warm-hearted, so willing to learn and adapt to what is not necessarily their way of doing things, and just the warmth and sheer humanity and support that comes across without questioning, involving all sorts of things that many of us never think we would be doing as part of life, whether job or not a job.
But also the issue about migrant workers is something that really does concern us. And it seems terribly unjust that their residency is tied to their occupation. Why would this happen in a workplace? It just seems totally wrong to me. And those people are staffing our aged residential care throughout the country. They deserve a lot better. And so do the workers from Aotearoa, New Zealand.
It would fall over. without them.
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
residential care.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question, Lynn. No, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. And Jill, thank you for your submission. Teresa, it's lovely to see you. You were the first strident woman I saw at a national CTU conference. You intervened. It was very blokey at that time when I first worked for the union movement, and you intervened very stridently and eloquently and loudly and funnily. And I think you were knitting at the time as well. So it's lovely to see you again. But I just...
You've gone, Matt. We can't hear.
I am so sorry. Oh, gosh. It's really lovely to see you all. And I just remember from you, Therese, at my first CTU meeting, the first national one I went to, that you were stridently, loudly, and in a very funny way intervened quite a blokey atmosphere, had quite a bit to say and very effective, but you were knitting at the time. So it just made it all the more effective, I think. So it's great to see you, but I just noticed that a lot of people have signed off on this. Are they residents as well? And is the general feeling, because the residents, you know, who can afford to buy and be independent owners are in a position that the aged care workers would never be in a position to do. But is there generally a real empathy and support for pay equity amongst that group?
Yes, our submission was signed by 15 people. And just looking at our list, I think about 7 or 8 of those have a spouse, a partner, or a friend in the village. Now, I think 2 or 3 of those people do not live in the village, like Jill doesn't, as a independent resident, but the rest of us are living in apartments or villas. So people have a husband, a wife, a friend, a sister, whatever, a partner.
Interestingly, if I could just add there, I looked around when I was sitting just watching yesterday everything that was going on. Some people weren't there, some residents, but there were 17 women and 4 men. Now, we talk a lot about the involvement of women in the care, but I don't think we think enough about the women who are residents. Or maybe we don't think about the men who are residents because their needs are not necessarily the same in some ways.
Our group has been meeting, as Therese mentioned, since the beginning of 2024 or earlier, and there are a number of us who remain active in the group.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very, very much for coming. If you have additional thoughts, very, very happy to receive those. Obviously, with over 1,600 submissions, we're not going to finish a report next week. So, any more creative, constructive thoughts will be very welcome. And Beth, our committee clerk, will be in touch with you on all of that. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you all together.
Thank you. Ka kite anō.
Ka kite. Thank you. We're now moving to Tessa Bowler. Tessa, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. This does happen some mornings when we have extraordinary submissions and we have more questions for them. But thank you, Tessa, and we've read your submission. Please feel free to make oral comments and then we'll have questions for you.
Brilliant. Kia ora everyone. My name is Tessa. I am work at Wellington City Libraries as a librarian and I'm a PSA delegate as well. And today, I actually really wanted to talk about how we use fisheries as one of our comparators because I felt like that has been misrepresented in the media and in the changes, and I thought it would be helpful to talk about that some more. So I want to talk about fisheries as a comparator and how we gathered our data. So to gather our data, a pay equity claim used something called Te Oro Waru. It's a job evaluation tool that was designed collaboratively with the government and the unions to assess the effort, skills, and responsibilities that take the job. The questionnaire is very rigorous. Our interviews could take over 3 hours, but its aim is really simple. It just wants to break down your job and discover what it takes to do it well. When the changes were announced to pay equity, our comparators were mocked by MPs and government, who I feel willfully misunderstood the process. And it was done to mislead the public about pay equity. Because yes, you can compare fisheries officers to library assistants. The pay equity process is simply about understanding the skills, effort, and responsibility that was required to do a job well. It doesn't matter what the job is, what matters is what it takes to do it well. Library work sometimes can be very dramatic. I personally have had to resuscitate someone in the doorway of the library building once, and I have many co-workers that have been verbally and physically abused by the public. It can also be, library work is also really quiet and meticulous and detail-oriented. We spend hours searching for books or mending paperbacks so they continue to be read by the public. What the pay equity process did through these interviews was uncover the skills that are required to do all these jobs, from the super dramatic to the super mundane, and what it took to do these jobs well. And what we found is that library workers are resilient and adaptable, and they're not afraid of a challenge. It proved that it takes a great deal of effort to work in a library and to care for both our communities and the information that we store on our shelves. Yes, fisheries officers were one of the comparators in our claim. They completed the exact same questionnaire, and the results show that while our jobs from the outside might look very different, they actually take similar levels of effort, skills, and responsibility. They have different day-to-day tasks, absolutely, but the effort itself is the same. When the changes were announced, the government chose one of our comparators as an example of why pay equity needs to change. The ACT Party even made these horrible sexist memes about our job, mocking the idea that we could have the same skills, effort, responsibility involved in our jobs, and that we could never be as valuable as a fisheries officer. But the thing is, the point of pay equity is that men's work and women's work, we've kept them separate, and that's how this inequity has been continued. And the changes on May 6th, one of the big ones was that claimant can only use comparators from the same or similar industries. And I strongly disagree with this, because pay equity is about valuing different skills equally. And this means that we do need to compare wildly different jobs to understand the undervaluation in different industries. And yes, again, I know that we do look different. I look different from a fisheries officer, but it does not mean that less effort goes into my job. Our aim with pay equity is simply, again, to understand the effort, skills, and responsibilities that go into women's work so they can be valued and paid appropriately. If we only compare ourselves to similar industries, we won't know if we're being valued the same as men in a male-dominated industry. Pay equity, I believe, can only be achieved if claims are allowed to use the comparators that suit their claims. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. I think you're on mute still.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Tessa. Now, I understand that the comparators were corrections, transport engineers, fisheries officers, senior management accountants, health and safety inspectors.
No, that might have been for public libraries.
Okay.
We used cadastral surveyors, fisheries officers, and school librarians, because that was a recently settled pay equity claim.
Yeah, okay. Now with cadastral surveyors, I think that the comparators were all over 90%. Is that right? Or am I misremembering?
Well, so I guess with so cadastral surveyors were actually scored quite a lot lower than us.
Oh, okay.
The thing we kind of found is that with something like cadastral surveyor, you do one thing really well, like you have this one bit of a skill that's really valued and you do that. So you get high there. But with libraries, because we do so many things, our skills were high in every, like reasonable, kind of high in every, so it ended up that we scored quite highly because of that. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things when you showed the ACT poster, when I was going through the breakdown of all of the things that librarians did, I sort of had one of those, you know, how ridiculous, oh, how dumb you are moments. And it's really clear in that ACT poster, because I hadn't put in librarians carry heavy things.
Yes.
Which is kind of just so fundamental. Yeah, absolutely. And even there, you get the librarians doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, this isn't a librarian because we wouldn't be carrying books like this.
No,
we're very protective of our wrists.
Yes, Tessa, thank you. You made it simple, something that's complex, simple. Do you think the communication from what we heard in the debate in the House was actually making a bit of a mockery of the comparator system?
I do, because the thing is, I don't think job evaluation is that odd, or I think most large companies use job evaluation to figure out how much a job gets paid. All that Te Orowaru does is that it does take into account the emotional effort, which obviously we are going to score highly in that because we're dealing with the public a lot of the time, and but a lot of jobs don't. That's the only difference, is what I can see from what I understand. Yeah.
So would you want it redefined or use a different system or keep it?
Just the same system. I think it is really, it's a good system, and it's not biased in any way, and it just asks really broad questions like, what sort of communication skills do you use in your job? Like it's not about, it's really broad.
Thank you, Tessa.
Yeah, so what kinds of resistance and or cooperation did you have from your employer group? You know, how nearly every process is paired. So it's not just, right, there's both of you sitting at the table agreeing on which the groups will be, agreeing on what the interview said, agreeing, etc. What was your experience?
So I wasn't a part of like the evaluation process. That was a small group, 3 people from the employer side and 3 people from our side. But what they did was they set it up so we could watch it happen on Zoom, and we could ask questions, and they could say whether or not if we wanted to query some evaluation, you know, a score they came to, whatever. But every decision, every score that was written down was come to collaboratively. And I know that it was really hard days for the people that did that, but they all felt like they came to what was the correct score.
Yeah, I think that, you know, you're very familiar with what librarians do, but the interviews are very, very important for giving depth and texture. And so what you find is that work far exceeds the kind of generic descriptors, you know, when you advertise the job.
Oh, yes, totally. And the variety as well. Like, I think about, like, David interviewed someone who worked on a book for us, and you think of like the day-to-day, the troubleshooting they have to do, the extra curation of their collections they have to do. They're quite often by themselves, so like the managing of the customers and all that sort of stuff, all the extra responsibility that goes into that situation.
And they have to have an HT license?
They do, heavy level, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have I got any further questions from the team? No, thank you very much, Tessa.
Thank you.
For what you've given us, and we're being very, very grateful for all of these submissions, and we hope we can do you justice in our report.
We're grateful too for your time. Thank you.
you very much. Kia ora. Our next submitter is Angela Fox.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Angela. I'm speaking today as Pumana Tangata, the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Lead at Kaitiaki Kindergartens. And today I stand here representing my organisation, Kaitiaki Kindergartens. We're a small non-for-profit kindergarten association with 14 kindergartens across northern and northwest Auckland. We've got a really proud history, opening our first kindergarten in the 1950s. And today we employ 124 kaimahi, including teachers, support workers, educational leaders and administrators who all contribute to the valuable mahi that we do. Of those 124 kaimahi, 121 are wahine. So today when I speak with the weight of their voices and their experiences behind me. And we collectively and categorically oppose and object to these reforms. In my role, I have the privilege and responsibility of overseeing the wellbeing of our kaimahi, most of whom are women dedicating their lives to the care and education of tamariki. But I also stand before you wearing many other hats. I'm a registered teacher, a lecturer, an educational leader, a daughter, a wife, and a mother. I'm also a woman of colour. I'm a proud New Zealander of Irish, Fijian, and Indian heritage. And I want to live in a society where I'm recognised for my skills, my knowledge, and my contributions, not for my gender or the colour of my skin, two things of which I have no control. There have been times in my life when these two things have made opportunity harder to find, yet working in the education sector has afforded me a sense of belonging, career progression, and opportunity that I may have otherwise not been given. It's one of the few places where my leadership, my voice, and my values have been recognised, and this is something I never take for granted. That's why this issue cuts so deeply for me, because it's not about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about fairness, dignity, and Aotearoa that we want to be. Aotearoa has a proud legacy of leading the world in women's rights. We're the first nation to grant the woman the right to vote. We also had 13 wahine toa sign Te Reti o Waitangi in 1841. And we've long been seen as a country that values women and recognises their strengths and contributions to society. But today we stand at risk of undoing much of that legacy. Rolling back fair pay protections and pay equity progress is not just a policy shift, it's a step backwards in our history. The recent NZEI pay equity claim was a product of extensive research, consultation, and collaborations, hundreds of voices, countless hours of work, and a mountain of evidence. It clearly demonstrated that the gender pay gap is not just a statistic, it is a lived reality. It affects women's choices, their well-being, and their long-term financial security. The work of NZEI stands as a testament of the collective commitment to the education sector and the commitment that they have to fairness and justice, values that should be upheld and not undermined by government process. Yet here we are, watching as due process and genuine consultation are being sidelined. The government's approach to pay equity reform has been rushed, poorly communicated, and deeply dismissive of the voices of those who are most affected. The lack of transparent engagement shows a disregard for the collaborative spirit that has always defined progress in Aotearoa. These reforms are not just a rollback of domestic progress. They place Aotearoa in direct contradiction with the values and commitments we have held on an international stage for decades. By making it harder for women in undervalued, female-dominated work to access justice and fair pay, we are undermining our credibility as a nation that claims to stand for equality and human rights. The right to equal pay for work of equal value is not a negotiable deal. It's a fundamental human right recognised globally. Diluting this right signals to the world and to our own citizens that we are willing to abandon fairness for convenience. And that's a dangerous precedent. And it's one that no responsible government should set. I see the impact of inequity every day in our kindergartens. Our kaiako and support staff give everything they have to ensure tamariki and whānau are nurtured, safe and inspired, and yet their mahi continues to be undervalued and underpaid. This is not limited to education. It's the same story for nurses, midwives, caregivers and social workers, women who are the backbone of our society, caring for our people, from birth through to old age. These roles have always been feminised, always been underpaid, and always been framed as service rather than skilled professional work. National data reinforces this reality. The national gender pay gap sits at 5.2%, but that headline hides the deeper inequities faced by wahine Māori and Pacific women and those in female-dominated care sectors. In the Ministry of Education alone, the gender pay gap is a staggering 15.9%. Let me repeat that, 15.9%, more than double the average public sector of 7.1%. Those are not just numbers, they are stories of exhaustion, quiet resignation, and of women leaving professions that they love because they cannot make ends meet. I also want to speak to you today through the lens of intersectionality. I live at the intersection of gender, ethnicity, and leadership, and I know firsthand how systems can both empower and exclude. For women of colour, these barriers multiply. We are often the ones doing caring, teaching, and doing the holding of others, while still fighting to be seen and valued as ourselves. As a mother, this matters even more. I have 2 daughters and I want to watch them grow up in Aotearoa that tells them that their worth is not reliant on their gender, their ethnicity, their sexuality, or any other factor beyond their control. I want them to believe that they will succeed based on their own merit and integrity. This is a moment that will be remembered. These choices will echo through generations to come. Do we continue to progress, honouring our rich history of as pioneers of equity and inclusion, or do we allow this moment to become a stain on an otherwise proud and progressive history? The women of this country have always been strong. We have always persevered, and we will continue to do so, as we have for hundreds of years before. But we should not have to fight the same fight over and over and over again. The work of pay equity is not a burden. It's an honourable responsibility and one that reflects the manner of who we are as a nation. Before I close, I just want to thank the members of this committee for the valuable mahi that you've engaged in. The work that you do matters so deeply to so many, and it's an honour to have my voice included in such a momentous and defining piece of work. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, Angela, and thank you very much. It's a very important contribution. There were how many kindergartens collected together? Were you telling us?
Yep, so we have 14 kindergartens. We're one of 3 main kindergarten associations in Auckland.
And so in engagement with NZEI, who were the employer partners?
I'm sorry, can you clarify your question? I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so because there's private kindergartens and then they're funded, right? So
right, yes.
Yeah.
So we are a public kindergarten association. We're a non-for-profit. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Leanne.
You may have seen the look on my face when you identified the gender pay gap in the education sector. So what parts of the education, is this right across education, preschool, school, and tertiary? What's the framework for it?
So this is the early childhood sector.
Just the early childhood sector, but even so, 15.9%.
Oh, sorry, that statistic runs throughout the Ministry of Education, who oversees all sectors within education. The work was specific to early childhood.
So the 15.9%, what was that for?
So that's the Ministry of Education as a whole.
Within the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
So okay. So what would it cover? It would cover administrative staff as well as
yes, it would include
teaching staff that are directly employed. Well, they're not directly employed though, are they? So it wouldn't cover school
yes, this
staff.
is more looking at our governing body. So
right. Gotcha. Thank you. That's fascinating. Shocking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. but also extremely valuable. And as we're finding with every different submission to us, Angela, there's, you know, we came to this committee with lots of passion and not much knowledge. Well, at least speaking for myself, but which I think is a really good way to enter. You know, we don't have presumptions. And so all of this material is so important. And I think it influences very much what we report on and how we report. So thank you for taking the time to send in a submission and to participate in this way. It's very extraordinary to be trusted this much by so many New Zealanders who are sending these submissions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I think that concludes our submissions for today, and until next Tuesday, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to our next hearing. Thank you.